Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure, we're continuing this week's theme of RAF history. And in the last couple of videos we were at the former World War II training airfield of Montrose at the Montrose Heritage Centre Museum. But for today's video I've come to another abandoned World War II training aerodrome here, but this one is basically abandoned in the wild lands. It's now returned back to the former farmlands that it once was before World War II. And in today's video I'm going to a little defensive machine gun bunker that at one time defended the old airfield, but also it trained the people within it like how to defend the airfield. That's the interesting thing with these World War II training aerodromes. It wasn't just the pilots that were getting trained here, it was other servicemen and women and members of the Royal Air Force that were going on to do other things at these airfields all over the country for the Great War. And a lot of the pilots of the Battle of Britain and stuff like that were trained at these Scottish airfields. That's why I just love sharing the history. And the cool thing with this machine gun bunker today, it's quite far out of the way, so it's got no graffiti or vandalism. It's purely just the history of the war as it was left. And I'm basically just heading in, there's kind of like this track. I'm basically going around the circumference of the airfield, through this forest and then up to the edge. As the years pass, there's less and less of these old World War II buildings to be seen. And that's why with this video is I love coming and documenting what's still there. And I have seen interesting history. There's actually World War II graffiti on one of the air raid shelters here up at the former fuel storage area of this airfield, and I've documented that recently on a video. But it's been so long since I've come to this machine gun bunker. I thought it's such a fun wee adventure. So here we are. Anyway, I'll update you once I'm further along. I'm basically making my way along this, what must have been an old track along the side of the forest. And I'm kind of just sticking to the ground here, which has got no overgrown long grass and stuff. In a couple of months, adventures like this will be impossible because of the amount of ticks that you get in Scotland nowadays in the warm weather. But at this time of year, we've got the green light here, folks, for an incredible wee adventure. Check this out, folks. Right now we're in the middle of this kind of misty forest, and it's just an absolute habitat of nature and wildlife here. Look how wet and boggy certain areas are. But the interesting thing with this piece of the track here, it's interesting because at this side would have been the former World War II airfield, and I believe this must have always been kind of like an old track. But look, you can see how like overgrown and stuff it is now. I believe this must have been one of the main tracks when they were doing this forest, but it looks to me like by the size of these trees they must have been planted after World War II. Basically this Stracathro Aerodrome was operational from 1941 until 1948, but obviously it was constructed in 1941, as we've proven from the wartime graffiti in previous videos at this location. And it's just cool to find that, but it's amazing, like, there's nothing being done to preserve that history or even document it. It's like random that I found it there, and it's special to video it before it is fully gone from the weather eroding it. And in today's video I'm wanting to have a proper look at the cement work on this machine gun position and see if there's any other World War II graffiti, maybe from the military engineers or whatever that poured the cement. The cool thing with the graffiti that I saw already, it maybe survived because it used to be covered up from earth on the air raid shelter. Unlike today with this machine gun position that's always been exposed to the elements and the weather. Wow, look how thick these parts of the forest here are, folks. Wow, what an adventure. And there's so many birds tweeting. This time of year they're all nesting. So check this out, folks. I'm now picking a random route. That's the track that you saw me on a minute ago, and I've come a bit further along. But now I'm just kind of picking this random route up through the trees here, heading towards the ancient historical wonder. And it's just mad, trying to duck and weave through all these little branches. I'm just hoping there's a way that I can get right up. Check it out here, folks. Look at this. This is like such a mossy section of the forest here, where the light's been getting in between the trees. Look, the moss just takes over, clings to the branches, makes everything look so green. And it's just a madness walking through. All the lower branches and stuff are just pure green, draped with that. It almost looks like some sort of mad decoration. But it's the true beauty of nature, folks. And this is the kind of little corner, it's off the beaten path. It's normally unseen. And it's just the craziest of scenes. Wow, look at this tree here. Mad, folks. Years and years of moss like growing on these branches. Just incredible. Look at this here, wow. I'm just pushing through, keeping going the same general direction I need to go to this bunker here. Check this out, folks. Look at these mad mushrooms that's growing out of the tree. Check that thing out. Wow. See, that's what these adventures are all about, folks. Not only finding the ancient abandoned history or even the World War II history, it's all about this, look. Mad, like nature itself that we find on the way. And it's just spontaneous routes that I take through places like this. There may even be more World War II history hidden within this forest, ready to be found, ready to be documented, folks. And that's sometimes how you find the coolest things. So check it out, folks. It's actually a relief. I've made it to the other side of that thick forest, and it's mad. I had the wellies on. I was proper like going through the ditches and the bogs, just trying to get a route through that. And it's just a different environment inside a thick forest like this. Crazy. But now I've made it to this other end, and I'm just kind of making my way down because I can see the stubble field where the machine gun bunker's at the side of. That's the cool thing with some of these abandoned places, folks. On the adventure to get there, that's when you often see some of the coolest things or areas of the country that you never would have explored otherwise. On today's adventure, it was cool just to take that spontaneous route through the forest. Sometimes the hardest walks are the most fun, when you're having to duck under the branches and pick the best route. It's just unexplainable, folks. Like, it's a fun thing often to get lost in a forest like that. I wasn't even sure if I was heading the right direction eventually, but I just had a general idea. But I knew eventually I would come to one side of the forest for sure. But yeah, it's kind of off-putting because the trees are planted in rows, but they go at different angles. So if you were just following the row of the trees, it would put you completely offline. And that's the mad thing with exploring sometimes. So sometimes the reason I come these crazy routes into a location like this is because I always come with the greatest respect to like landowners and the farmers, and I'm not wanting to be walking about in his fields or his private land. I just want to come and document the World War II history which is left for us to see before it's too late. And then I'm on my way, folks, and that's what these adventures are all about. Wow, I'm just scrambling still, because obviously these trees have been blown down in the recent storms. There's less routes around them all to try and like navigate. I'm just thinking of the best way. I think I'd be better going around this way here. There's so many spider webs today, folks. As I walk between the trees, there's just spider webs sticking at my face the whole time, and I think it's those tiny little like black spiders you get that run about. You almost can't see them, they're so small. But they're kind of draped between these trees today, and every 2 seconds they're just on my head. So at this Stracathro Aerodrome, they used to actually do, I think it was crosswind. There was strong crosswinds at this airfield, and they used to do practice landings with the strong crosswinds, but also they used to do low level approach training, I think. And there was actually one time one of the pilots crashed his Hurricane here and sadly perished. Obviously the famous World War II plane, the Hurricane. They were flying about here training some of the pilots and that. Whoa. I'm thinking I'd be better maybe just nipping over the fence at this point, folks. Look at this area that I'm in. Absolutely crazy. But I'll show you this before I cross the fence. I'm literally like ducking under these trees here, folks. Look at this, folks. This is a tree fungus here that grows in the dead wood. How mad is that though? Look at the vivid colour. Even at this time of year here, in the winter where everything's so dark and grey, you get mad stuff like that coming out of the tree. Almost alien-like. Anyway, let's head on with this one, folks. Yeah, the mad thing with this, folks, I literally came out of the forest and started walking down here, but I've come too far. I've literally walked through that forest for no reason at all. Here's the bunker here. And look at this. This is the old World War II airfield. And just imagine the sound of the planes. And then one day it was abandoned. 1948, the land fell silent, returning to the sound of agriculture. And it looks like this field will be getting ploughed pretty soon. Because of the wet weather, you can really see, even in fields like this, the water's just sitting. And that's how it's kind of been in Angus this year. It's been quite a wet season here. But yeah, I'm just blown away. I can already see this history up ahead, and it's got such a cool character. The grey concrete sticking out of the field. So if you imagine the trees that I just walked through weren't there as far as that first road where the row of beech trees were, you have to imagine this may have been an open piece of land here. And then this bunker would have been covering the edge of it, defending the airfield here, but also training the people within this bunker to defend other airfields. After they had finished their training, they were probably sent off to any airfield over the UK. There was so many RAF air bases and stuff back in the war. That's how it's amazing just to keep finding these things and documenting them. And this one's in such great condition. I absolutely love to see it, folks. Look at the shape of these windows here. And that's obviously designed to minimise the chance of the bullets entering the bunker. It causes the bullets to ricochet and deflect away from the hole. And it's similar to some of the defences we see, even dating back to some of the old castles for like the 1500s and stuff. Defensive lookouts haven't changed much since that time. Obviously, as bullets and stuff developed, they started adding more bits to the side with those steps in the concrete. But it's just interesting to see, because this is the genuine RAF bunker here, it would have actually had proper machine gun mounts and stuff inside it, unlike some of the home guard bunkers that I visit, where they would have just had their rifles or whatever, or basic equipment. These would have been most likely using Bren guns, because this was a training aerodrome. Also, there's a couple of interesting little anti-aircraft positions as well here, but they're not as strongly built as some of the main airfield anti-aircraft positions. So once again, I think that's because this was a training site. It was more to give the operators an idea of what to do, rather than some of the other ones where it was crucial that they were actually shooting the planes out of the sky. But here we go, folks. Let's head into this World War II historical wonder. A lot of the time, these pillboxes and bunkers under the ground always had a secondary way of exiting. And this here would have been like the emergency escape. But also, they probably needed like a hole for bringing the equipment in. Now, I was thinking, but then right enough, they would have taken the equipment in the door. See, an interesting thing as well, folks, the shape of this here. This is obviously the original door going in with this thick wall. And look at the way the top is shaped here. It's super interesting to deflect the blasts which may be coming from this side, whereas it was properly protected at this side already from the bunker itself. And that's an interesting detail there. And then look at this. Wow. See, this is the sort of detail. I've never seen this before, folks. Look at that. That was most likely for hanging like camo netting over the top of here and then hooking it in. That's so interesting to see, folks. Look at that detail of the history. Look how the top of it's been hit, and just think, World War II hammer. The boy swinging that and then throwing the camo net over and hooking it down. Just think about the people stationed here. And there was genuine like attacks from the German Air Force in these areas, and there's actually pictures taken from the German Air Force of this airfield in World War II. So they were obviously doing aerial reconnaissance, but on their like paperwork it's actually called the Brechin Airfield, and that's because Brechin's the nearest kind of town. But obviously the RAF name for it was the Stracathro Aerodrome. But the interesting thing, we'll go in and have a look in 2 seconds, folks, but look, the old World War II wood is still there, the old door, and what a mad detail that is. Before we go in, I'm wanting to see if there's any other details like that. Often these had shaped pieces like this to like obviously minimise the blast. Yeah, look at this, here's the other hook at the other side. Sometimes as well they had a cover thrown over. If in the event of like a gas attack or whatever, they would often have a cover, but the wooden door inside was their main, obviously, final door they closed to keep anything out, but the wooden door itself would have probably shattered in a blast. And I have seen some other buildings which have got a metal door over here, most commonly the air raid shelters, whereas this bunker had so many openings around it. Obviously a metal door here wouldn't give you that much extra protection. Yeah, look at this, let's take it all in, folks. Look at the thickness of this roof here. Wow, it's so special to see. And it's mad that it's just in the corner of a field here in Scotland. That's the kind of World War II history that you just can't beat, the character of it. You can almost see how they've poured this section of the roof against the wooden shuttering, and then they've actually poured this secondary piece even higher. And I've seen before, between the layers, they've actually got a waterproof coating, almost like a bitumen type coating. Stops the water going down in. Wow, what an amazing place, folks. I'm going to get a little photograph here. I love a scene like that with the moss in front of the opening there. So wild. World War II history, folks, almost gone and almost forgotten. So another interesting thing to consider with these bunkers, now you see them in their grey form, the colour of the cement, but originally they were actually painted with a camo colour scheme, and quite often there was earth and stuff thrown on top of them. But it's crazy, and that was a detail that I learned from the Montrose Heritage Museum when we visited the old airfield there. In the previous couple of videos, the gentleman there spoke about the old bunker camouflage, and it was often a set camouflage scheme that they were given, that they had to paint the bunkers. And that goes for the same camouflage scheme and that on the World War II planes. The RAF planes all had the very same camouflage scheme, and the RAF pilots were able to tell a British plane from its camouflage, whereas the US at that time, they had just kind of like any camouflage pattern would go. And that was how there was often friendly fire incidents, because the Americans didn't recognise the British planes. But that was very rare, a situation like that would occur, but it did happen now and again. But it's crazy to consider even the camouflage and that for back in the day. Not only the camo netting, but the bunker itself painted the colours underneath. It's for the minimum chance, obviously, of it being noticed. So I'm just keeping walking around here and making sure there's no history that I've missed. Look at all these stones. Whoa, there's so many of these beasties flying about today, folks. That one just flew right into my face there. Anyway, let's head on round here, folks. You can see the great condition of this one. The way that the windows and stuff is not eroded at all. Wow. The history, folks, here, protected from the vandals. And look how this bit here, it's almost original. How you can see the ground's been quite stony and they've dug it down below the level of this window here. And the bunker itself has been dug really far down into the ground. And look at the detail here, like the way it's shaped, the way the cement work is. Don't know how well the camera's picking that up because it's quite dark under there. Wow. Crazy military history once again on the channel, folks. And it is cool just to remember all that was done for the country at the times of war. 1941, all this stuff built. And from looking at it, I've not seen any more graffiti written on this one. Wow, look, let's head on in. It's actually pretty difficult to get in this one because, well, the angle of this roof here, folks. I'll get rid of these spider webs. Look at that, that's what the wellies are good for. Get rid of the spider webs and then head on in. Feet first. Here we go, real adventures on the channel once again, folks. Always promise you the coolest of content. Climbing into these bunkers, what is even going on here? Woo! Now once again, folks, the acoustics in a place like this are incredible. Wow. Yeah, I was just having a look around thinking, is there any crazy creatures in here that's a way to attack me? But it looks okay. Often you would get foxes and stuff, maybe in a place like this. Yeah, this is insane, folks. Look at there's original details in here. So check this out, folks. Here's an original detail with big bolts sticking out the wall, and I believe there was a proper wooden shelf structure there at a certain time. And another interesting detail with this is where the machine gun mounted. But the interesting detail with that is the gun didn't directly mount to that. There was another frame clipped into here, and then the gun slid into the frame. And then that allowed you obviously to move the gun up and down, as well as from side to side. And just check it out, there's the view. Imagine none of those trees being there. Wow, it is proper echoey, folks, but here we are. We'll document the history and then we're on our way. Look at these original shelves here. Wow, just think about that wood, folks. Most likely felled 1940, 1941, and it's just still here. Telling the story of history almost forgotten. Now look at these bolts. And look how the wood's into the cement here. That's the kind of detail that I love, folks. Just taking in all the little artifacts and things that they did. And you can imagine the frame mounted in here. All that history most likely long gone. See, some of the windows don't have the big bracket for the machine gun. But yeah, the one at this side does. That was maybe their two main lookout holes, this one here and the one at the opposite side. Let's check it out, folks. Let's look at this side. The main road goes over at the far side, and then there is a small anti-aircraft gun up there. But then also across at the far side of that forest there's actually another double anti-aircraft gun, which would have been using a Bren gun originally. Look at this here as well. There's an original hole there coming through like a pipe, and that could be where the electronics and communications were coming into this site. And if you remember back to the first Montrose RAF video that I did there at the museum, in the bunker there was one of those green phones with a handle, and quite often each of these locations at the airfield on the far perimeters, they would have had one of these phones, and quite often they were connected to like the battle headquarters. So in the case of like an invasion, the bunker could be controlled through the battle headquarters through the messages brought to the phone. Or maybe they would get coordinates or ideas of what area the attack was coming from. And check this out here, look at the old door. Just think, folks, every year that passes, this is disappearing more and more. That's why it's cool to come back and see it today. Share it with the world, and there's new viewers on my channel that will never have seen this before on the videos, and it's cool just to keep going on these adventures. Look at the marks on the cement where it's been poured originally against the wooden shuttering. And just think that was the main little entrance coming in. The people would have had to proper duck down to come into this. Check out, wow. The way it's constructed, folks, and built, it's so strong, obviously, so bombs and bullets couldn't penetrate it. It's just mad to be in here. Look at this as well. Here's another detail, folks. You see the marks here? That's been an old, internal wall. But there's no marks hardly on the roof, so you can see how it's been put in at a separate time. Obviously during the bunker's original construction. They must have just had the slots and then they put the cement piece in and then cemented along the edges of it. And for some reason they must have been smashed. And that's obviously to stop the bullet ricochet. If ever a bullet or whatever had come in here, it wouldn't have been able to hit more than one person or anybody in the best circumstance. And you can see there's been 3 of these walls in the middle. Wow, what a place, folks. The acoustics obviously in a bunker like this are no the best. Again, it's proper echoey. But I just love coming in and telling the story of the World War II RAF history. Maybe with this being a training aerodrome, there would be more people in here than at a standard airfield position, because there'd be as many people getting trained at once. And airfield defence was obviously a key part of the World War II airfields. Anyway, let's climb back out of this incredible structure, folks. You can see the lookouts with the wood built in. There's been obviously stuff screwed there, and I think from other airfields that I've seen, it appears to be quite heavy duty shelves. And often in the middle as well there was heavy duty shelves, probably for ammo, and often apparently the guns were stored as well on an internal shelf, and then they were only actually clipped onto the brackets at the time of an attack. And that maybe explains what these shelves are down here. Maybe the gun storage. So if somebody was like reaching in, they wouldn't be able to grab the gun. Anyway, let's head on out this little hole. Emergency escape, maybe originally like bricked up so it was easily busted out internally, but if that got blocked at the door, it's important and crucial to have a secondary exit from the bunker. And you can just imagine if it had been blasted, the horror. Wow, I'm just really struggling to fit out here, folks. Hold on a second. Let's set the camera up so that you folks can see me coming out. I'll just lay that on the little tripod. Here we are, folks. You have to be agile to be an explorer in Scotland often. And obviously, because the main door is not open. Here we go, yes. Yeah, often if the main door's not open, that's the kind of way you have to access places like that. The acoustics out here are so much better. Now there's not that mad echo. So there you go, folks. Just think of the servicemen and women trained for the Great War in a place like this. Or even the people that maybe did have to keep their eyes to the skies at the times when the German planes were flying over. When you see an angle like that, folks, that's one of my favourite angles of this place. When you see the wee entrance leading down in to such an incredibly well preserved little machine gun bunker, obviously you have to consider all the way since the 1940s, a place like that's just been decaying, and slowly the weather just takes back over. And it's mad to see this details. Each side of the door, it's got these super strong hooks, and it may have even been some sort of defensive cover here that they put over and they clipped on. When you see the angles of them, I don't know, it's just interesting. And it's been cool to come and see that today. I've not seen any like World War II historical graffiti written on this one, but here's another interesting fact of the history. Look in the original architecture, see this groove here? That's super interesting because that's can been so the water runs off and away from the door. And you have to think there's probably little stone steps leading down into that as well, which is cool. And that's the kind of history. It's obviously covered up to stop the boys' sheep or livestock going in for good reason. And this is obviously back to being some main agricultural land here in Angus. Shout out to the farmer for leaving it here, and the history is preserved. I'm not going to go climbing on the top because you can see the final cement coating actually comes off. And there's been nothing on the top of this one. Often they used to have sometimes a hole in the middle with a searchlight or an anti-aircraft gun, but this one's been purely an airfield machine gun position, probably using the Bren guns, the same as the anti-aircraft positions here at this site. Yeah, there we go, folks. More RAF forgotten history hidden in the wild landscapes of Scotland. Yeah, one of the coolest features of that one is the metal brackets where the gun clamp actually went in there and then they were obviously able to pivot the gun all around any direction they wanted to aim at. Probably even if there was planes, they'd be taking pot shots up at it, again, just trying to defend the land the best they could. Whoa, there's a total fly just landing on my nose. This has been happening today, folks. There's so many little flies and beasties. I'm now taking a secondary route out of this site, folks. And like I say, I always come with the greatest respects to the farmer and that. I'm no trampling any of the land here. I'm just making my way around the outside. There is a couple of bits of this airfield that I've never been able to record, but they're up kind of in the private farmyard, and it's kind of modernised up there as well. I have documented other historical parts of this as much as I could, but this I would say is my favourite part of this airfield. Just even when I look back now, the character of it. It's World War II history at its finest. And now the sun's shining. I can't believe it, because it was proper so rainy when I first came out. Now it's a completely different day, and it's so warm now. So over here to my left, now I've come a bit further along the field here, there's actually the remains of the old runway. Most of the cement work's still there, and the runway on this one is kind of like a curved L shape. It's not quite the shape of a letter C, but it comes all the way to where this rough ground is there, and it goes all the way around that ploughed field into the far distance, as far as where that row of trees is, and it goes right back up to the main hub of the airfield there, which used to feature most of the important buildings, including the generator shed and the substation, the hangars, and all kinds of other buildings like the officers' quarters and all the main kind of buildings. They're all up at that far end. This is kind of the outer perimeter line here where the machine gun bunker's located. And yeah, it's just mad. It's beautiful Scotland once again, folks. And like I said earlier in the video, in a few months this stuff will be too overgrown, and the amount of creatures that live within the long grass and stuff, when you're trying to climb through it, folks, it's just a madness in the summer. So sometimes the harder to reach locations are better at this time of year. Look at this, there's a metal post here stuck in the ground. I wonder what this has been marking at a certain time. I wonder if this is a World War II metal post here. Maybe at one time there was a sign on here saying warning, military area, do not enter. Could have been something like that. It must have been so interesting back in the day if you could time travel, going back to that period. Obviously it was a horrible time when it was the time of the war, but it would be so interesting to see these places when they were first built in their prime. And yeah, it's just cool to think of that bunker as well when it had its original camo sprayed onto it. So this is another crazy little area of land that I find myself in. I'm just kind of skiting around the edge of this forest here, and I'm just thinking it looks like there's a decent grassy bit down the side of that field there, so I'm thinking I might just head straight down that way. The original beech tree track that I came in is actually way down there. You can kind of see the next tree line. And it is interesting the size of that airfield. Obviously the runway came right up to here, so you can imagine the World War II planes coming in from all these angles. Maybe depending on the time of day or the wind condition. And look, we've got this little stream here. Check it out, folks. I'm blessed with this kind of grassy section here. This is maybe the way that I should have walked into the site instead of going through that jungle-like forest that I explored. This is more of a pleasurable area to walk. We're out here to duck under the tree branches. Yeah, these adventures are some of my favourite, folks. Look at that fence post. The moss has even taken over that. And that's the kind of wet environment. Even in the summer, these forests are quite a damp place, and that's why the sort of nature and wildlife you get is quite mossy, and there's a lot of crazy looking like funguses and stuff off, and like that orange thing that we saw growing on the tree. So check it out, folks. You can see this boy's seed is starting to grow here in this field, freshly planted, but it looks like it's so much greener further over because it's further away from the trees. Often if you hear a field like this next to a forest, The trees take the nutrition and the minerals out of the ground, and even the water. So sometimes the fields can look like this, a bit bare around the edge. Also the light. Sometimes the sunlight doesn't hit the field if it's beside a forest. But it is good to see that the springtime crops are now growing out here in the lands of Scotland. Look at this, folks. This little burn here, it looks super sewagey. The water's quite white in colour. And then look, there's this other stream coming down for this side. But the crazy thing, you can actually see the difference in the colour of the water. I'm not even sure if I want to jump right down. Look, you can see like the line in the water there, where the sewagey water's at this side, and then the fresh other water's coming down into it. Mad. Look at this, folks. You can see how it looks like this tree's been like hit by lightning or something, or it's maybe just rotted out. You can actually see the way it spirals. Its inner form's been revealed by the fact it's been either rotted out or struck by lightning. But the cool thing with that, you see the way it twists. All trees twist around 7 times from the bottom to the top, and that's in a tree. Like, that's a useless fact to know about each tree, folks. Each tree has got 7 turns of that spiral, and you can really see it on this one. Trees don't just grow straight like what you might think. There's actually levels to everything, folks, even tree growth. And it's mad to think, and it's interesting to question why. Why is it each tree is 7 spirals to the top, even when they're little or big? It's just interesting, folks. It must be in the tree's DNA. Look at this tree right here, folks, with the lichen on it. Look at it there. Check out the way it's actually growing. That's an absolute madness right there, folks. Looks like some alien plant. Look how misty this little hollow is here that I'm in. It's like crazy how moist and damp it is in these locations. Check it out, folks. Shout out to the person here that's saving Scotland's red squirrels. Look at this massive old oak tree here, folks, that stands at the side of this track. It's absolutely massive. Probably hundreds of years old. Think of the history that this tree's seen. Think of the old World War II planes flying over. And then this tree's just stood the test of time, folks. It's ancient. This is quite a cool bit of land to explore because of the wildness. Obviously all these sorts of trees are planted for the timber itself, but these older beech trees and stuff are from an ancient time. These trees are lining the edge of this old track, and it's been such a fun little adventure. We've documented a piece of forgotten World War II RAF history, and it is crazy to explore these abandoned wonders of Scotland before the history's lost, just the same way that this road here has been lost to the wild lands over the years. Slowly those bunkers decay, the old wooden doors and details inside rot away. Even the metal on the gun brackets one day will be nothing but a rusty puddle. Right, folks, that's me just about back at my car. It's been an incredible adventure, and I've just loved the landscape, the nature and the history that we've seen today. And it was cool to end this week with this video after seeing the World War II history that's been saved in the story of the Montrose Aerodrome, like museum and that. It's cool to have this at the end of the week, which is another local World War II training airfield, but this one almost so far gone that the history's nearly lost back to the earth. Anyway, I'm ending this one here, folks. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.